Hi, I'm Josh Cadillac, and welcome to my podcast, Know Your Shit. I've been blessed to see great success, as well as seeing the bottom up close and personal in 2008. And if there's one lesson I've learned, is that if you want to have success and differentiate yourself from everyone else out there, you need to know your shit. As a successful real estate and crypto investor and an educator, it drives me insane that people do not immerse themselves in their craft. Everyone is so busy advertising and testing new sales techniques, they forget the most important thing, the product. Here I want to talk to the folks that got this right, the most successful people in the world in every industry. Bring them to you and find out what they learned in their business that made it great. When you're listening to my podcast, you will know for sure that the topics and experts we have on have one thing in common. They know their shit.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Know Your Shit podcast, where our pride and knowledge in what we do drives us to be excellent. My name is Josh Cadillac, and I'll be in the driver's seat today. And folks, we have a great guest for you today, somebody that's really doing some cool stuff. Nick, welcome to the podcast.
Josh, there is no place I'd rather be. I love talking to people like you about my favorite subject, which is personal development books and how we take information and implement it.
Love it, man. Love it. So where did you get the start in doing that, Nick? What kicked off this passion for that particular topic?
So I was not a reader growing up. I didn't like education style stuff at all. I was more of the jock stereotype. I played football. I was captain of the wrestling team. And by the time I got to college, I was still a pretty poor student, somebody who loved being in the gym, I think more than the classroom. But I took this internship going into my senior year of college at a local software company. And my boss at the time introduced me to the world of podcasts, just like this one, where a host would interview a successful guest and the guest would share what made them successful. And I had about an hour commute to and from that internship every day. So I started listening to these shows and I was amazed at how often I heard the same book titles tossed around. And so I thought, well, I'm not really open to this stuff, but if all of these people that I want to be like are reading the same books, I think there's something that I should probably try to figure out. And so I went to my local Barnes and Noble one day during lunch at that internship. I got a couple of books and man, I have not looked back ever since.
You know, Nick, there was a book that I got told to read as a kid, and I was never a big reader either. I mean, I did well in school, but, you know, it was just, school was never that particularly that hard. I felt like it was kind of relatively easy stuff for the most part. And but I just never liked reading books because it felt like I couldn't do anything. Like I had to stop doing everything in order to do that thing. And it was, what is it, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, or whatever the name of the book was.
Effective People, yeah, good book.
Something along those lines, yeah. And one of them was Successful People Read. And I'm like, man, but I hate this. It's just so stinking time consuming. You know, like I look at the people at speed reading, I'm like, man, I wish I could be those guys. But like, no matter what I do. And then I'm not going to lie to you, Nick. Years later, I discovered Audible and all that guilt went away because, man, I listen to all my books and it is amazing how much I've been able to take in because it's just this wide world of ideas that you're exposing yourself to. And it's really a matter of figuring out how you can take information in. And so, you know, there's people that I know that I love and respect, and they got to have the physical, tangible page in hand. And for me, man, if I can have that thing that I'm listening to and just drinking it in, it just makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that loves physical paper books, but I do listen to probably 30 Audible books every year. In fact, Audible is the sponsor of my podcast. So big fan of that platform. I listen, like I said, to probably 30 books a year. And it's a great way to consume big books, especially ones that you don't want to try reading.
Try getting Atlas Shrugged done any other way. No, it's a monster. I would say, I mean, I'm a significantly bigger addict than you. I'm about 150, 200 books a year. I'm at 2 3/4 times speed, and I'm tearing through them all the time. But yeah, man, I mean, and the thing is, it's especially for topics that are one that I normally wouldn't like get through. Something like one that I read recently was a book called The Creature of Jekyll Island, which is about fractionalized banking and how the Federal Reserve works and all this kind of stuff. It's not really what you'd call a page turner in most people.
Yeah.
Like gee, is this Chinese torture? Is this like, am I being punished to have to read this title? But, as to listen to it, wasn't bad at all. It's just, one more little thing. And I think you'll probably agree with this. The more that you read, the more things start to make connections all over the place with like, well, wait a second, that's not a good idea. They tried that and it didn't work because it's only when you don't have that context and that basis that you can be sold just about any idea in the world.
Yeah, these books condense decades of useful information into days of downloading that information from an audiobook or reading it in a physical book. And just like you mentioned before, so the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, habit number 7 is called Sharpen the Saw. And it's all about, you've got to read books. You've got to become intentional about consuming useful information. Like when I'm in the car, yeah, I can listen to the same song for the 500th time, but that's not going to get me any closer to where I want to be in life. Whereas reading a book, even about a subject that's not necessarily a page turner, just might, because you have no clue where that next clue is going to come from. It could come from a book that you didn't even intend on reading. Somebody recommended it, whatever the case is, you listen to it, and then boom, there is that thing to help you solve the problem that you're currently facing. It's not in a song, it's in an audiobook. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I remember one of the things that cracked me up when I heard it was they asked the guy who ran Ferrari's advertising, why don't you advertise on television? He's like, the people that buy Ferraris don't watch television.
Yes.
And I thought to myself, there you go. There's all you need to know. Certain choices, I've said it for a long time. I'm a big believer in it. It's the choices that you make that have gotten you where you are. If you want to wind up someplace different, start making different choices today.
Yeah, I love thinking about things that way. And what's so great is that who you want to be 10 years from now is a result of the choices you're making today. And you have agency. You can change them. Like, you want a different reality? It's as simple as making a different decision right now.
I love that, Nick, because I'm a big believer in teaching exactly that you need to get out of the easy trap this culture sets. The culture today makes it so easy to be a victim rather than taking responsibility for where you are and how you got there.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is ever going to be 100% your fault. Who cares if it's 10% your fault? You could have done something about the 10%. That's where your focus needs to be. If you're trying to change the whole rest of the world, good luck, right? Take and work on changing, as the song says, the man in the mirror, right? Deal with this problem, child, you got, because God knows this is the biggest stumbling block to your success that you got to get through. You got 2 scarce resources in life, time and money. And the way you use those 2 things is going to dictate where you wind up. And so start making those choices to take and use those resources better, husband them, make it a business decision. And that's not something that we teach.
Yeah, you and I are cut from the same cloth, as they say. I actually have a tattoo on my chest that says Memento Mori, which is remember your own mortality. You are going to die. And it sits above my heart. And every time I look at it in the mirror, I'm reminded of the fact that time is scarce and we need to make the most out of it. Otherwise, it's going to pass by and we'll end up regretting that we didn't do more. And I don't want that story. That's not my story. I'm using my time effectively, and I'm looking to positively impact the world. And that doesn't happen through sitting back and watching Netflix and scrolling social media. It happens through action. You have to take action. And so, yeah, man, I love what you're saying.
Well, I mean, look, it's a question I ask all the time. I've been asking it more and more in my classes recently, which is this: who here believes there's a better version of you inside of you that you've never seen? If people think for a second, every hand goes up, right? I say, okay, whose job is it to get that out of you? And who's the biggest beneficiary if you do? And who's the biggest loser if you don't? I mean, who here is comfortable dying with their magnum opus still in them, with your best work left unseen? It's like having a car that you've tuned and polished, this high performance car, and all you ever do is use it to go back and forth to the grocery store. Man, how tragic is it if you don't take it out to the salt flats at least once and just open that thing up and let it scream and see what it can do? You know what I mean? It's like going to the gym and never max benching. Like after all these years of bench, let's just see how much weight will move, kind of thing. I put so much in. I've got so much time invested in this thing because, as you said before, the sand in the hourglass is only going one direction. And we don't know how much sand there is in the top of the hourglass. And so how we take and choose to take ownership, take possession of that, and exercise, as you said, our agency to make those choices, rather than living our lives in the passenger seat of our own lives, is something that just too few people are taking responsibility for.
Yeah, I have 2 hourglass tattoos as well, and I have about 15 hourglasses on the shelves behind me because, yeah, it's the best reminder. You're totally right. And there's a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware. Excellent read. She was a palliative care nurse. I think that's the right term. So she would help people at the end of their lives. She'd spend time with them, read to them, ask them about their lives. She started asking people about their regrets. And everybody had regrets, all these older people, but they didn't have the physical ability or the time left to go out and remove those regrets. And the number one was that people lived lives based on other people's expectations of them, not their own. And that's a sad place to be, man. Just like you're saying, wake up. 99% of people are like sheep, just scrolling and zombies to and from the grocery store, like you said, barely moving. I hate to see that. And just because you mentioned it, I'll throw it out there. I had a great bench day today, Josh. I walked in the gym. I hit 225 for 12. I weigh about 185 pounds. So I felt really good about that. I said to my team after my gym workout this morning, I said, I felt like somebody took weight off the bench. Like I felt like it was one of those kid bars or something like that. And that happens through consistency. It happens showing up day in and day out for years and years and years and years and years and years. And yeah, I love to play around with maxes.
It's nice to go in there and see it because and the crazy thing is you never know when that day is going to sneak up on you. Like you do the work and you hit the plateaus and you just keep banging your head against it and banging your head. And then one day you go in there and the weight just moves, man.
Yeah.
I remember the days of, powerlifting days back when, trying to put up, big numbers, and it's the grind. It's signing up for the grind and doing the work and trusting that if you do the work, the results will follow. And most people just are too afraid of what it takes. And I mean, me included. One of the coolest things to be able to say is, yeah, man, I was a Navy SEAL. I'd love to be able to say that. I just don't want to put in the work necessary to actually, the idea of going through that, to be able to say that, like I've looked at the cost benefit analysis and said, you know what, I just don't think I got what it takes to not ring the bell. So it's not one for me, but it'd be cool to say. And there's just so many of those things in life that people look at and say, yeah, I like the end, but you know what, I'm not willing to put in the work to get there. So I'll just accept this lesser version of this life. And it's just not worth it. And sadly, people cheat themselves out of the capacity that they have, finding out, because especially as guys, for guys, it's so important to prove to ourselves what we're made of, right? I mean, that's how guys do well, is getting pushed up against the edge. One of the studies that I love, several good books on the topic. There's a great book called Boys at Risk, talking about how boys are struggling in our culture, failure to launch. And one of the big ideas is that our culture is all based on self-esteem right now and keeping everybody's self-esteem high. And the thing is, when women's self-esteem is high, they score better on standardized tests every time. And when guys' self-esteem is high, they score worse on standardized tests. High self-esteem is terrible for guys.
Yeah.
If you don't believe that's true, go look at what a drill sergeant sounds like. Is that a caring nurturer? Are they saying, Nick, you have one more push-up. I believe in you. Or no, is he questioning your parentage, your heterosexual? He's questioning everything about you that makes you a man, right? He's trying to make you scream from the inside, no, I'm better than what you're saying. And when we don't do that, when we take and we soften the edges, we bubble wrap everything, what are we doing? We're taking away the ability to take and show you that you're capable of more than you thought you were on the way in the door, right? You didn't think you could run 5 miles, and then you go 5 and maybe even 6. And you're still standing, fingers and toes accounted for. Holy hell, who is this guy? This guy just won 6 miles. Crazy talk, right? So yeah, put that
No,
out.
listen, I love that subject. I was somebody who was very insecure growing up, and I had a lot to prove, and it developed a chip on my shoulder that allowed me to grow to the person that I am today. I wasn't spoon-fed anything. I had to go out there and get it myself, and it was tough, and I faced a lot of discomfort. I was laughed at a lot for my ability or lack thereof to communicate effectively growing up. And now I would consider myself a very well-spoken person as a result of all of that. Wouldn't have happened if I didn't go through all of the discomfort. So yeah, that self-esteem thing is really interesting. I haven't heard it talked about like that before, but it makes total sense to me. And there's an interesting thing that I remember Andrew Huberman, he's one of my favorite podcasters. I remember him saying on a show once that when men are defeated, so boys are defeated, high testosterone, there's a hunger to get back in there and try again. But with women, that doesn't necessarily exist. When you're defeated, there's, that stinks. Self-esteem gets hurt, but there's no interest in recovering from it. And so, yeah, that makes sense that women should be told, hey, great work, and you'll do better. Men need a little slap in the face. You need to lose. And Josh, it's also one of my least favorite parts about the traditional education system in the US. We're taught that failure is a bad thing and we should avoid failing. But as a business owner, the fastest that I can fail, the better I am. And on the other side of failure is everything. It's everything that I've become today. A business owner, happy, successful, whatever you want to call it, healthy. It's all through failure.
Sure. It's learning what doesn't work and figuring out what does. It pushes us to use our creative ability, because sadly for guys, excuse the choice of word, but we often need a foot on our ass to take and get going. And the ladies don't. The ladies are amazingly well driven, it seems like, on their own. I mean, I can tell you because I used to train. My ladies, nice set, way to go, just like that. You're doing great. With the guys, oh, I'm sorry. Did your sister come and lift for you today, or what are you you taking estrogen shots? What was that last set? Like, you're immediately criticizing and beating on them, and what happens? They show back up and they try harder, right? And so there's really, like, in a culture that's trying to be so PC and accepting and understanding of everybody, there's this entire rejection of male culture, and you're seeing the pushback. The pushback is failure to launch syndrome. It is the highest it's ever been in this country. Men have stepped out of culture, and they're leaving the ladies to fend for themselves. And frankly, it's tragic. I watch it, and I watch, these women that are working so hard, taking care of kids and whatever, and the significant other is nowhere to be found, living in mom's basement playing World of Warcraft. And
yeah, I agree, man. It's sad. And that's why I wrote this book, Rise of the Reader, because I read stories by David Goggins, Jocko Willink. Yeah. Jocko Willink, Nick Bear, some of the hardest dudes on the planet. And they teach you what's possible. They show you human potential at its finest, how hard to go, what the self-talk should look like to keep it going, how to sustain consistent failure. And that's what's beautiful about reading books like this and having people write books like those, because it means everything to somebody like me who needed a little bit of a roadmap. You're not going to find it on TV. You're not going to find it scrolling through social media, because the prevailing narrative is one that, like you said, men should be weaker. And I hate that. I hate everything about it.
It's a narrative of victimhood. It's a narrative of splitting the world into oppressed and oppressors. And I'm sorry, it's just not that simple. It's a lot more gray than that. And the reality of it is, the best thing you can do to make this world a better place is to go out there and be the best version of you that you can be. Not sitting here taking and trying to complain about what's going on. And if I could take the word raising awareness out of culture, I mean, what is that? That is, wearing a t-shirt, that's your big contribution to society that raises it. Come on, go in there and do something. Go in there and do something meaningful. Make your life count. And whether that's being, if you're a shoemaker, make the best shoes that you are capable of making. That might be your contribution to making this world a better place. God knows we could always use a better pair of shoes out there, right? Just figure out what you're here to do and do the ever-loving hell out of it. Go all in, full bore, hold nothing back. Pursue excellence with everything. Excellence is something to be chased and pursued relentlessly. It'll always stay just out of reach, but you always got to chase it, right? And that's the thing, always try to be a little bit better than it was before. I don't care how good it gets. Never perfection. Perfection is a trap. Perfection creates paralysis, but excellence is always worth striving, right? That greatest of great that you're capable of, and find out what that is. And that's the thing, especially as a guy, showing yourself what you're capable of, defining yourself to yourself, so that you know who that guy looking back at you in the mirror is. That guy looking back at you in the mirror is the guy that's still standing when everybody else is calling it a night. Well, those lessons you learn, that's the tank you go to when it gets hard. When it gets hard, you're like, wait a second, I'm that guy. I can hang with these bums. Let's go. And teaching yourself those lessons is such an important part of this. And what you're saying, the rise of the reader, the idea that you're exposing yourself to these ideas that you're not going to come to on your own. My father told me a long time ago, there's two groups of people in the world. A group of people that have to make all the mistakes themselves, and the group of people that are willing to learn from mistakes of other people. He said, son, please be smart enough to avoid the first group. Learn from the mistakes of other people so you don't have to hit every stop along the way. And that's what reading allows you to do. So I love what you're talking about, man.
Yeah, I mean, Josh, right behind me, I have over 1,000 books. I've read over 500 of them so far. And, there are books about Steve Jobs. There are books about Jeff Bezos. There are books about people who run billion and trillion dollar companies or did. And those are billions and trillions of dollars worth of lessons. There are hundreds and hundreds of years worth of information behind me. And you're totally right. Learning from your own experience and your own failures, that's one thing. But if you can learn from the experience of other people and filter your decision making through what worked for them, sure, instead of just shooting blindly, yeah, you're far more likely to hit something successfully. So yeah, I'm with you.
And I mean, and it's avoiding the other big mistake of culture today, which is that they find one character flaw in a person. It means that you can disregard everything they have to say. Steve Jobs was mean to his employees. I don't want to be like him. So be like him that just isn't mean to their employees. Learn from his strengths, learn from his weaknesses, pick the best parts for yourself, work on you. I mean, it's this very flawed thinking that people have. And what it does is, once again, it gives them a pass not to have to look at themselves. We fight introspection so hard in culture today. Everything is always somebody else's fault. There's always an excuse for me not to have to look at me as the source of the problem. Look, the best traction and the best growth comes from recognizing your biggest problem is going to be looking back at you in the mirror every single day. What are you going to do with this bum? You got to manage this guy. You got to get a handle on him, because I got to tell you what, you're going to want to take and lose weight. He's going to want to destroy the package of double stuffed Oreos. How are you going to win that negotiation? Because the negotiations we have with ourselves is an ongoing battle. And until you learn and build up that habit, like reading is a habit of winning against yourself. There's just one more. That is the person that's responsible. The CEO for your life, the CEO of your life. You got to figure out how to handle the staff.
Yeah, it's one of the ways that I've been able to better manage myself actually has been through meditation and mindfulness, which is one of those soft skills that sometimes gets discredited. But here's what it's done for me. It's allowed me to have a little bit of additional time between an input to my brain and my reaction to it. And that little bit of extra time applying logic instead of emotion has created a beautiful life for myself. I was emotional, reactive, oftentimes in a negative way for a huge chunk of my life. And I finally woke up and said, wow, I have control over myself. And the more control you have, the more you want. And it's just this great, beautiful momentum upwards, where nowadays, if I tell myself to get in an ice bath, I get in the ice bath.
Yep.
If I tell myself not to eat Doritos, I don't eat Doritos. You know what I mean? And that willpower is transferable to other areas of your life. And a lot of it came through what is considered to be a soft skill, but like it's really worked for my brain.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's in just about every major culture, there's a place for taking a step back and for finding moments to reflect in peace, whether it's taking a day off, the seventh day off, or, prayer or meditation or whatever. But that mindfulness, and the other piece of it that I throw on top of that, Nick, because I'm with you 100%, is just gratitude. Just realizing, I was reading something the other day, and it said, imagine that if you woke up tomorrow, everything you weren't thankful for, everything you didn't thank God for today wasn't there.
Oof.
And I had to immediately stop and be like, uh-oh.
I'm gonna write that one down. Yeah.
Right. And I say that because, grateful people, I forget who I heard it from. Grateful people are never hateful people. That might be a Zig Ziglar. I want to give whoever it was credit for it. But, you want to have a great exercise, Nick. Walk down the street and see how few people actually have a smile on their face.
I know.
How few people look like they're happy to be alive. Right? And that's because as much as we have, as good as we have it, we just take so much of it for granted. Right?
Yeah.
The fact that this chair is comfortable, that I'm talking to somebody cool like you, that we're doing it virtually on computer. There's just so many things to be grateful for. When 100 years ago, I'd have to go 40 miles to the nearest store on a horse. It'd be a 2-day trip, for God's sake. We get lost. We get so spoiled that we don't just take that step back and say, man, we have been given so much. How can I not have a smile on my face that I get to experience this for the rest of today?
Yeah. At my company, BookThinkers, we have a Slack channel, and one of the group chats in there is called our gratitude group chat, daily gratitude. And every person on the team is required to put 3 things they're grateful for every single day. And I also have the numbers 1, 2, and 3 tattooed on my wrist, because for years I would journal 3 things that I was grateful for every single day. And I wanted that to become a consistent, constant reminder, and also a conversation starter with other people. And on the back of my wrist, I love traveling internationally, and I love other languages. So I have agradecido tattooed, which is gratitude in Spanish. I got that in Colombia. So, or actually I got that one in Panama. But gratitude is huge for me. And in fact, in the book, Rise of the Reader, you'll probably see the word gratitude 40 different times in 40 different places, because it's that important to me too.
Yeah, man. It's the basis of just trying to, what are we talking about here? We're just talking about getting you right. You didn't come with an instruction manual. You didn't come with a tutorial. There's no YouTube video to download that tells you. You got to take and sort this out. You got to figure out what you would with any employee. What would you figure out with an employee? All right, what kind of a person is this I'm working with? How do I help this person achieve the most that we can? How do we help them get out of themselves what they're capable of? A good boss would always do that. And a good boss will always care about that person and make sure they're not over-promising that person, over-committing that person, making them do more than is actually possible, and then getting all over them. That's not how we treat ourselves. We do one of 2 things. Either we shred ourselves when we don't do these 27 hours a day worth of work that we laid out for ourselves. So we just take and beat ourselves up, or we give ourselves a pass. Getting in between those 2, we're terrible at as human beings. And most people do a bunch of both in their life, in different areas of their life. And it creates this stew of inaction that leaves everybody trapped in a place of almost borderline lethargy. Like they don't feel like they can get out. They don't feel like they can get out of their own way. And when there's that hope of something better on the inside, when you start to figure out, the safest thing to figure out is where you want to get to. Once you start figuring out where you want to get to, now we can start charting out a course of how we're going to get there, right? What we need to do today to get there. And that's just not part of the common culture. Culture today is do what feels good right now, worry about tomorrow when it gets here. And unfortunately, it doesn't yield the best results.
Yeah.
So
personal responsibility does seem to be lost on today's culture. And you know what? When you follow somebody like Goggins, he says it's not enough to be uncommon. You need to be uncommon amongst the uncommon, because today, to be uncommon, you just need to show up on time, look somebody in the face, shake their hand, smile a little bit. Like, you're already uncommon if you can read a book. If you read a book in the last 12 months, that was about improving yourself and you implemented something from it, you're already uncommon. But that's not enough. Like that was the standard a few years ago. Now that's enough. So yeah, I'm totally with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's that constant moving of the bar. And I mean, again, running through the filter of not everybody's the same. And so figuring out what excellence looks like for you is going to look different than what it looks like for me, because our skills and our gifts are different. We're all made a little bit differently. And so, figuring out what your excellence, as I said, shoemaker, okay. There's nothing wrong with being a shoemaker. One of the greatest things my father ever told me was there's honor in all work. All work deserves to be well. So if you're the guy that takes out the trash, you make sure those trash bags are tied off nice and they seal, because you know what? You're the one that did that trash bag. That's how you do trash bags, right? It's that little bit of extra taking value from your own work, respecting your work, not because of who you're doing it for or how much you're getting paid, but because you're the one that does it, taking it personally, looking at it as a reflection of who you are as a human being. We don't do that. And sadly, when we don't do that, we lose the value that can come from just the joy of doing great work. One more thing, again, a very classical idea of work that's been lost in the last 40 years. We just don't think about it that way anymore. It's who's our boss and how do we get by with as little as possible to get our paycheck and not get fired. The Office Space mentality of work. That great cult classic film, right? It's getting away from that. So I love what you're talking about, man. I love all this. What do you see right now? What do you see as the opportunities in the market for people out there? Where do you think people should be looking? Where's the demand?
Oh man. Well, there's a demand for everybody to be better at what they're currently doing. I'll tell you that. I think that when COVID hit, a lot of people got furloughed. They went home. They reflected for the first time in years and said, oh, maybe I'm not in a job that I really love. And so a lot of people have turned to personal development style material like this podcast, Josh, like our conversation, or books to start to explore different things. There's a guy I want to introduce you to if you haven't met him before. His name is Ken Rusk. He has a book called Blue Collar Cash. And here's where the opportunity is. Blue collar work, trades type work, using your hands, skilled labor. Everybody thought that artificial intelligence was going to come in the form of robotics and replace people that flip burgers and laid bricks, but it's the opposite. All the white collar services crashed. And all of a sudden, that's what's automated. And so in Ken's book, Blue Collar Cash, it's one of my favorites. He says, for every 10 electricians or plumbers retiring today, only 5 are getting into the space, but demand for those jobs and that type of skill is going up, right? So when supply goes low and demand goes high, you get paid a lot of money for the same work. And so I think that's an area that you have to take responsibility in. It's hard work, no matter what way you look at it. There's huge demand for it, and you can get paid. So that's where I think a lot of people should start focusing their energy.
If you've never engaged in a ton of it, Nick, I can tell you this: it's a lot more rewarding to take and wire a house, turn the light switch on, and see the bulb come on than it is to fill out the PTS 13B form and send it to upper management for review. It's a lot.
It's a stand back moment. Like you get to see what you did.
Absolutely. One of the first hobbies my father put me into. My father was born in 1930. People on this podcast know that. So his hobby growing up as a kid was model trains. And I say to people all the time, especially if they have little boys, get them into model trains because it makes you do woodworking to build the tables. It makes you do low voltage electric work to make them all connect. And you learn to work with your hands. And when you do it right and you throw the switch, it goes. And now you know why it goes and what makes it go. It blows my mind going around with people and they just take for granted how everything works and that it works. I see the roller coaster. I want to know, okay, how do they get the seats to take and go back on, man? How are they making that happen? And look at the mechanic and there's the servos and there's the motors and there's the drive shafts. Why? Because this world is a big, beautiful, interesting place. Why do we take it all so much for granted? Because there's people like the ones you're talking about, the people like me that still have calluses on their hands from the ditches we've dug and the pipes we've run and all that stuff. These are the folks as I say all the time, it's great to be a lawyer, but the most important person in the room when the toilet clogs is the plumber. You know what I mean?
True.
Who it is, that plumber is the most important guy in that room. And sadly, as you're saying, there's just not enough of those people in here because we've almost made blue collar work, I don't want to say a criminal offense, but like, oh, your kid didn't go to college.
Oh, I hate that.
Sorry. Oh, so your child is not $200,000 in debt for a degree that they can't use for anything but wallpaper right now. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't even want to get on that, man.
Yeah, you know what Ken calls that? He calls it the $400,000 swing, because not only are you taking 4 years to go into $200,000 of debt, but you're also missing out on the opportunity to make $200,000. So it's a $400,000 swing.
Worse than that, brother, because you lose the opportunity cost of that money. You could have been investing some of that money for those early years. That money, when you take that money from 30 years to 40 years of compounded growth, the difference in the return is just mind-boggling. You throw $150 a month away, it's millions of dollars. It's a couple $1,000,000 just for those few years. And so, yeah, I mean, but the thing is, they don't teach people to make those business decisions. They don't treat where you go to school and how you use that time after high school as a business decision. You have so much time. You have so much money. You have to make a choice. Where are you going to go? If the student loan program wasn't basically run by the government at this point, and it was actually underwritten the way it should be, like, all right, you want to get a degree in what again? And exactly how many jobs are that for? How are you going to pay us this money back, bub? Like that would, like a normal underwriter. I go to get a loan on a house. That's what they ask me. I go to on an investment property. Like, okay, how are you going to pay this back? We don't ask kids that. We don't even let that enter into their minds. It's a Disney Channel decision.
Yeah, it's crazy.
What's your dream, Bucky? Go follow your dream career. Oh, a PhD in ancient Sanskrit. Perfect. Gender studies master. There we go. That's going to get you there, buddy. And so, we let them rack up the. Let's be honest. They're enslaved to a debt now that's going to follow them around for the rest of their life. And even if you do a bankruptcy, you can't make it go away. It's going to chase you forever. It's such a bad position we put people in for something that doesn't necessarily give a return on investment, but we haven't prepared the people that are engaging in this business decision with the tools necessary to determine whether or not there even is a return on that investment, or even to know what a return on investment is. They've never even heard the term. It's predatory lending at its worst, sadly.
Yeah, it is. It's terrible. And nowadays, there are more free resources out there than ever, yet the price of college education continues to climb. So, yeah, man,
it continues to climb because, once again, they've made it so that everybody can go. They've increased the demand exponentially, which means that the supply side can charge whatever they'd like. But you're right, what you're talking about, and this is one of the coolest things. If you've never read a biography of this guy, I highly recommend it. Andrew Carnegie, one of the most interesting guys you'll ever read about, because he believed one of the worst things you could do was die with all your money. So he gave away more money than anybody else, but he believed the only thing he believed more than he should give away all his money was that he should give it away well. And so he would only support two things. And almost all of his money, Carnegie Hall is one of his things that he did, right? But libraries. He said, look, I want to give people the opportunity to learn. He got roped in with as one of the robber baron guys and all that kind of stuff. Every place, every plant that he built, every steel mill, he always had a library there for his employees. If they wanted to go better themselves, he made away from it. Never made them, never gave them anything. You want it? Go earn it, right? There's the roadmap. And the thing he did was church organs, because it was the only place where most people could get exposed to music, because of how spread out this country was. And he believed music was an important part of people's soul. But yeah, man, talk about great books, obscure places where you're going to find something. A biography of Andrew Carnegie, but very much changed the way, a better way maybe to think about charity and how to do charity well, rather than giving people things. Allowing people to participate in their own redemption, if you will, is such an important part of doing that well. It's an idea that, at least for me, stuck with me when I read his biography. That was really, really good. But before I go too far down rabbit trails, I tend to love rabbit trails, as it turns out. What are you most proud of that you've accomplished in business to this point?
This year will hit 7 figures in total revenue, and I'm still in my 20s. And that's what I'm most proud of, because here I was, early 20s, didn't have a clue as to where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do. But I started reading books about entrepreneurship. I got a taste for it. I started applying them. And here we go. 7 figures in total revenue in my 20s. I think as far as business goes, that's probably what I'm most proud of. I've also had the chance to interview so many of my heroes in the business, kind of like famous business author space, people like Grant Cardone, Lewis Howes, Robert Greene, Ryan Holiday, Alex Hormozy, all these guys, and spend time with them, learn from them, pick their brains. Like, I'm proud of my ability to get in front of those people. And so I feel really confident about that.
Nice. Great accomplishment, man. Way to go. What one piece of advice, you had to break it down to one piece of advice would you give our listeners?
Read more books.
Read more books?
Yeah, I think read more books. You never know what's going to happen when you read a good book. Just like you mentioned with the Carnegie biographies, you learn all about the importance of libraries and music. Investing, die without any money in your bank account, die with zero. And read more books. That's what I'll leave everybody.
All right, cool. Normally I'd ask for one book recommendation, but I'll give you three. You're a big reader, although I hate to put you on the spot, because sometimes for me, when people put me on the spot, I'm like, the tilt light goes on. I have so many come to mind, I can't quite get where I want to be. But what's one for sure? And if you want to add a couple extras, go ahead.
Sure. Here are some of the first books that I read that changed my life forever. Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. That book opened my mind to the world of personal development, that you can condense decades of days into written information and use that information to better your own life. And as a result of that, I've invested in a couple multifamily properties, and I'm really interested in personal finance now. Number 2, I'll say The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. That book taught me the importance of automating, delegating, and eliminating low value tasks to other people and focus on high value tasks. It also got me interested in traveling the world, and I've been to 25 different countries now, and sometimes for up to a few months at a time. And the 4-Hour Workweek made that happen for me. And the third one I'll mention is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. You had mentioned the power of compounding earlier, and it really is, as Einstein said, the 8th wonder of the world. So if you're somebody interested in understanding a little bit more about how long-term money plays work, I think that's a great place to start. But it also relates to your habits. Like, one small habit will compound into something completely different over time, like going to the gym or reading books.
Good stuff, man. All right, I'm gonna put it on its head here for a second. Got to do it. I know you're sitting here talking about books, and I'm a fan. But is there a movie out there that you'd recommend to somebody, like, hey, watch this one? This one gets me going, or this one's a great one. Anything come to mind?
I have a few, but I'll throw out one of my favorites of all time, which is Gladiator. I love that movie.
Great movie. I always love the fact that he made sure to hang around till he had delegated everything that needed doing. He's like, all right, I think I got everything done, and then he died. Just stuck it out. Let everybody run down to the Coliseum, give out the orders. Yeah, man, that's a great film. All right, so what's next for you? What's the next thing on the
this book launch is my focus right now. So Rise of the Reader, Strategies for Mastering Your Reading Habits and Applying What You Learn. I'm building out a personal brand. I've got a big business brand, but I'm building out a personal brand now. I'd like to speak on stage and help people retain and implement more from the conferences that they're at. And so I want to speak a little bit more. I want to put out some courses, deeper dives, just continue to share the power of personal development. Obviously you're reading or consuming 150 to 200 audiobooks a year. You're addicted to this stuff just like I am. And I want to make the world a better place. Like, we scroll through social media and there's so much negativity, hatred, divisiveness. And I want to make it a better place. Like, my entire feed is full of positive, constructive, useful, actionable information because of the people I follow. So I want to help more authors put out better content, get more attention, be more useful. And that's what I'm focused on right now.
That's good stuff, man. It really is. We need more of it, and sadly, people need to break their addiction to the negativity, because
They do.
It's cheap thrills at people's expense. Speaking of Gladiator, I mean, that's what social media has become. It has become the Coliseum of the day. We go there and we watch people blow each other up for our entertainment, and it's just so bad for the soul.
Yeah, Josh, real quick, I went to Rome last year and I toured the Colosseum, and that's what they said. They said the royals, the elite, they built the Colosseum and made admission free for slaves so that they could escape the fact that their lives were terrible and distract everybody so that they could go make money and manipulate society from a distance. And that's exactly what it was designed to do. It was a distraction for the common person so that they forgot how miserable their lives were. And today, social media, the major news stations, for the most part, not all of it, but for the most part, it's just a distraction. And as we just saw with the recent pandemic, and now this data coming out that BlackRock and Chase own like 40% of the S&P 500 companies. It's like all of it is money and power games, and we're just sucked into it, and we forget that it's happening, and we just want our dopamine hits while we watch Netflix. Like, come on, wake up, do something about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's using even information like that the right way. So like the place that they're turning us into is much like Europeans tend to be more jealous of those that have nice things. Like I have a customer from Germany. He tells me, he when he was coming up, the only thing he ever wanted to do was buy this nice Porsche for himself. So he built his business. He did the hardest thing in the world in Germany. He opened his own small business. It's very expensive, very hard to do. The tax code really is against him, whatever. And he built something. He got his Porsche. And he couldn't drive it anywhere because when he'd go to a business with his Porsche, they automatically assumed that he was making too much money and they didn't want to do business with him because of the jealousy mindset. So you know what? To me, BlackRock did whatever BlackRock did. You know what? I got to start being smart like those guys because they're
true.
Let's see the guys that are killing it rather than being jealous of what they got. Let's figure out what they're doing and start doing. I mean, as long as what they're doing is not immoral. I'm never going to sit there and say to do the wrong thing. But rather than getting trapped in this, they should have less. Let's see how I can have more. I think one of the greatest places, there's two that I'm going to recommend, two places that I like to look at that I think are actually uplifting. One is Shark Tank. I like Shark Tank because you see the creativity, you see what makes capitalism great. You see people figuring out what their brothers and sisters' problems are in the world and how they can solve it better than anybody else, better or cheaper than anybody else is solving it today. And they're bringing that gray matter to market, man. That's what we're talking about, right? Stimulating and figuring out what you got in the tank. And the other place, which is, I call it cotton candy for the soul. I can't say that it's got any nutritional value necessarily, is a show called Forged in Fire. It's a show where they just make knives. But if you want to talk about a show where there's just this positive culture of wanting to see everybody win, and not in a bad way, like if you don't make something good, you're off. But the other contestants are in there like, oh, you need help with it. They'll lend a hand. It's not this cutthroat, bad kind of competition. It's everybody wanting to see everybody get ahead, but at the same time, everybody striving to make the best thing they can make for themselves. It's a little thing, right? But it's just so different than what you see in culture. And finding those places, even if you are going to take and tune off, you're going to watch a little bit of TV, find those things that uplift you and help you want to be a better version of yourself. It just seems like a better waste of the scarce resource, those grains of sand we see falling every single day. So
100%. Yeah, I'm with you.
All right, man. I got two questions left for you. What do you do to unwind, man?
Well, I go to the gym. I love working out. I think that fitness is a great way to release energy and get your mind right.
Yeah.
And I love traveling internationally. That's my other passion. So I love trying new foods, speaking new languages, new fun experiences, wandering around new places. Like I love it. And, I schedule actually a couple months a year for myself to unwind. I work pretty hard while I'm at home, and then I totally shut it off, and I'm able to reset and
Nice.
reflect and rewind. Yeah.
I love that, man. That's great stuff. All right, last question. You survived the gauntlet, brother. Where can people find you?
Book Thinkers on Instagram is where most of our stuff is going on, and you can ask me for book recommendations in the DMs or check out some of our content. BookThinkers.com is our website. You'll find some of the services that we provide for our author clients around book PR, book marketing, podcast booking, those types of things. And obviously you'll find some information on my book, or you can just go to riseofthereaderbook.com, and that's where everything should be.
Nick, I got to tell you, man, it was a genuine pleasure having you on. It was great talking to you about some of these ideas and tossing around. So thank you for your time, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
And all those folks listening, get his book. Read more. It's never, ever going to hurt you. Never going to hurt you. All right, till next time, everybody. We'll catch you here at the Know Your Shit podcast. Take care.